Is
Honestly,
this interesting? I introspectively think of the world like Wayne Dyer style all the time. No daggum Wi-Fi.
Maple Valley Days. Can we sit back and be comfortable? What about my hair?
Check.
I'm gonna lead it off. I am.
Hello and welcome to the Anatomy.
Hello and welcome to.
No, it's not your voice. It's my voice.
Fine.
Hello and welcome to the Anatomy of Marriage podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Studley. And
My name is Seth Studley, licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay. Crazy person.
The new intro I got going. I'm working some new material, okay?
Today we are going to talk about vulnerability in marriage.
Oh, boy.
And
this is a big one.
Brought up the topic of Brene Brown and all of the things that you're doing in order to be more vulnerable.
Right.
So take it away.
The concept of leading with vulnerability, of course, Brene Brown talked about this in many of her books, and I read one of her books like a year and a half ago.
Braving the Wilderness.
Yes, and it was awesome. If you haven't, please check it out. And after reading that, I decided, well, what am I waiting for? And I started doing open mic nights, stand-up comedy.
Everyone, give it up for Seth Studley. You guys ever wash your hands only because there's someone else in the bathroom? All right. That's right. We got a lot of guilt washers in here, right? Right?
Why? Because it was one of the scariest things I could think of. And I says to myself, you have to do it. You absolutely have to do it. Right?
Right.
But you've never been really scared like that to do stuff, have you?
I'm amazing. No, I wouldn't say I haven't been scared to do stuff like that. I just have had a different experience with it. So.
Yeah. And then also I was in a play today. That's another thing, trying to lead with vulnerability. I was actually in a play, in a scripted reading that we performed at Maple Valley Days.
Yes, with the Creative Arts Council.
Yeah, and it was awesome. It was a lot of fun, and I was a little bit nervous, but it was a lot of fun. It was something new that I'd never done, and I'd been wanting to do it for 20 years, literally since I was like 20.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And it really feels good. So let's talk about vulnerability in marriage and what that means to you. Because there is emotional vulnerability, there's physical vulnerability, there is, spiritual vulnerability.
Relational.
Right.
Yeah, there's everything. I think the thing that stands out to me about if I turn the question around or the idea around and I say, if I'm not leading with vulnerability, what am I leading with?
Fear.
Maybe.
Or laziness or
anxiety.
Control. Yeah.
Like what else would you be leading with if you're not leading with vulnerability?
Mm-hmm.
And what is vulnerability? Like what is it? Google it.
Well, no, it's different for everyone, right? Vulnerability for me is still public speaking, which I also joined Toastmasters this year, which was great. That is a lot of fun. You get up and you speak in front of people and you get critiqued on your speeches, on your random speaking.
Ain't no daggum Wi-Fi.
There is. Go to the 0.51. I joined, like I said, Toastmasters is a huge thing. And the Toastmasters is like AA. There is a meeting of Toastmasters in every city, everywhere. So there's no excuse that you cannot find one if that's something that you wanted to do. That can really, you can meet new people, you can get out of your comfort zone. Yeah.
Toastmasters is nice, but we're not talking about Toastmasters right now.
Yeah, no, but that's just an example of leading with vulnerability. When I think of vulnerability, I really don't think of you. You've always just been like, I kind of do what I want to do and you don't care. So how are you vulnerable or not vulnerable in our marriage?
Superiority.
Ooh,
no,
there we go.
I think it is birth order. I think it's family of origin. Our family I have been brought up to be like, don't be a jerk, help people out, do what is good and right. It's kind of what I think of in our family. Like you just, you be nice. You don't be an idiot.
But how does that how does that translate into vulnerability?
Because I think it takes vulnerability to do those things. I could be totally wrong or off, but
I think you're off because I try to do what's right and try to
but
be
out
not
of
a jerk.
you do what's. I think the difference there with family of origin, you try to do what's right according to the law of your family. Like, oh, what is right is you wear slacks and a polo to church.
What is right is you follow cultural norms.
Societal norms of your family. But like in our family, it was like, oh, what is right is you do what is right to others and for others.
Right.
So who cares about the slacks and the polo shirt if you're ignoring the homeless person on the sidewalk every day that you go to church on Sunday? How great how great are you? It's that kind of thing. And I think there's a big difference because it requires that you move away from the social norm. You ignore you ignore the people who are ignoring the person on the side of the street in order to connect to them in a real and authentic and generous and genuine way.
Okay.
That takes vulnerability.
Right. So family of origin definitely has a part to play in vulnerability as well as a million other things in marriage. How have you been vulnerable in our marriage in the last 1 year? I'm asking because I think real life examples are helpful to people and to help normalize some processes that we all go through. So how have you been vulnerable in our marriage?
So recently you wrote me an email.
Yeah.
It was a little bit awkward. And you were like, hey, maybe we should try some new sex things out. And I was like, okay, totally out of left field. And you were like, maybe the X, Y, and Z thing. And I was like, I could just be like, sure, I'll try those out. Oh, whatever. But I was like, I'm going to be vulnerable and tell him I'm not in any way interested in those things. We can try them out if you are. I have zero interest. And these other things are what really interest me. Like sort of deeper connectivity, yogic-ish stuff. That to me sounds great. And it took a lot of vulnerability and intention and I don't know, vulnerability is the only word I can think of, but like saying, thank you for you bringing an idea to me. I'm going to kind of reject your idea and turn that way instead.
Right.
And that felt vulnerable because I was like, I could really make him upset right now, or maybe he's going to get upset because I'm not responding how he thinks. That's the first thing that comes to mind, but maybe that's not what you're
I never thought of it that way because I was really being vulnerable in even writing you that email.
Yeah, I was more vulnerable.
No, I don't think so because
I
think I initiated the whole thing, right?
Yes, you did.
So being vulnerable and saying, I want a change, or at least being honest with you in that way, right? And you just responded back with honesty. And I wasn't weird. I wasn't anything. I was like, oh, okay, that, you know what? Now that I think about it, that sounds cool too.
Yeah.
That sounds good too, right?
Actually, in that same email, I know why that made me think of that email is because I also told you other things. Like I have physical issues that my body, that I deal with from different surgeries and stuff that I've had just in my life and I was sort of having to explain it because you were talking about doing like a, 30-day sex challenge or whatever. And it's like, that might be cool for some people, but I genuinely don't think my body can do that because I have issues. And so in order to share that with you and decline that suggestion in a way, I had to be vulnerable and share that this is something I don't want to have to say out loud, but I'm going to, and here's why. And so that was, vulnerable.
Was it easier for you to be vulnerable because I was vulnerable first?
Yeah, I would not have told you those things otherwise.
Right.
I wouldn't
So
be
the whole,
here, let me tell you about this.
Right. So the whole idea of that, and I'm not saying, oh, I did it first. Who cares? Either one of you just do it. The point is vulnerability. Why are you smiling?
It's all I did it first. Who cares? Either one of you, just do it.
The point is vulnerability begets vulnerability, right?
Yes.
And that's, gosh, you just got to read that Braving the Wilderness book because once somebody is brave enough to do something, it gives permission for other people around them to share similar things. And then when you're sharing, then I want to share, and then we're just like tumbling down the hill of connectedness around vulnerability. And it's so funny, like and I've only done stand-up twice, right? Once in Nashville, once in Seattle. We tried it in Denver, but it didn't work out. And when I tell friends and family that, which it's not, I've only done it twice. It's not like amazing or good, but everybody, even people I don't know, like at Toastmaster and stuff, they're like, oh my goodness, I could never do that. You know what I'm scared of too, is blah, 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 and this and this. And it's just so funny. And I'm like, listen, I'm not anything good. I just shared something that I was like, this is scary to do. Okay, who cares? I'll do it. And that really feels good, because that, like I have said in past podcasts, when we're vulnerable, that intensifies or just concentrates the relationship up to the next level. Sometimes it does. Of course, vulnerability can be very awkward and ill-timed and go horribly wrong.
Yeah. Well,
however, we've been kind of lucky with it, I guess.
And you have to think too that vulnerability is setting. It's dependent upon the setting and who you're speaking to. You don't share all the intimate details of every minute of your life with everyone.
Of course not.
Unless you have a podcast about it. And that's the goal of your whole show.
What are we doing? Yeah.
But that being said, being vulnerable in an inappropriate context, I don't mean inappropriate as in speaking about inappropriate things, but being vulnerable when it's not the right time to be vulnerable or with the wrong person can actually be very, like, I want to say damaging. I don't think damaging is the right word, but it can put other people in a predicament that they didn't ask for.
Right.
So if I came up to you and let's say I'm just your friend and I'm like, did you hear that, or no, so-and-so is cheating on me, blah, 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 blah. Like, now you know. What are you going to do with that information? That's vulnerability that maybe if this person was asking you for help, that's a different thing.
Right.
Maybe if it was in the context of a bigger conversation about this topic. But I don't know, just to look at vulnerability as it can be used in the wrong way. But we're talking about using it in the right way. Does that make sense? Right and wrong sounds weird. Can be used in a helpful way, and it can be used in a potentially
a really weird, awkward,
not helpful way,
right? So I think one of the keys to being vulnerable is you have to at least be comfortable enough with that vulnerability in yourself to be able to share it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was going to say that before you decide, okay, I wish the internet worked, because I would be looking up the definition of vulnerability. I'm irritated I can't do it right now. But the thing that comes to mind is, in order to be vulnerable with others, you really need to be vulnerable with yourself first. So things like admitting.
What's an example of that?
Like, let's say you have a problem cutting, or like you're just like, I can't stop this, I don't know what to do. You need to have the conversations with yourself about it and saying, yes, this is a thing that I'm doing, and yes, I feel this way, and kind of
maybe accepting it, accepting of yourself and whatever vulnerable thoughts that you're thinking, kind of come to terms with that, because it's not like you're going to be. It's
like speaking truthfully to yourself is what I'm trying to get at.
Right.
So you have that sort of introject inside your head voice, right? Like you need to be vulnerable with yourself in your mind and with your thoughts, and allow yourself to be gracious. Let me say that again. Gracious with yourself,
right?
Kind to yourself, open to yourself. And then you can bring that to your partner or whomever.
You have to be accepting of yourself, right?
Yeah. And so a good example of that, you mentioned earlier that I've never had a problem being vulnerable. I've also never had really negative self-talk. So I've never looked at the things that, even the bad things that I've done, and been like, oh, you're so stupid. You're such an idiot. I wish you'd die. You're so dumb. Like, I've never, ever, ever had that. I've like, will look at a situation and be like, well, that's not what I meant to happen, or I certainly didn't intend for that to happen, or maybe, yeah, I was being totally mean there. That's not really who I am, and I'm sorry that I did that.
So the 6 people in the world, you're one of them, not having negative self-talk. Tell me one thing that you actually do struggle with.
Beauty. Being so beautiful. I'm
and
just
vanity.
Joking. What do you mean, what do I struggle with?
What do you struggle with?
I'm a workaholic.
And okay, how does that negatively affect your life?
I don't know, because I love it.
Okay.
You're always annoyed at it. That is a negative effect.
Well, maybe not annoyed, but like, I'm living,
Nah.
I'm here, I'm over
Nah.
here,
Nah.
and that's not cool.
I don't know what you're really asking. I don't know. I introspectively think of the world like Wayne Dyer style all the time. I'm always like Joseph Campbelling, and
So you don't have any areas you can grow in?
I didn't say that.
What do you struggle with? Where can you grow to become a better person, a better wife, a better mom?
I feel like I'm trying to do that every single minute of every single day. I listen to Dan Siegel podcasts, Joyce Meyer podcasts. I feel like every day I am trying to raise myself higher up. So I never stay stuck. You know what I mean? I never am like, oh, I should really stop eating nachos every day. Every day I'm like, I'll eat salad and maybe a nacho. And I try to find a way to continually make progress. A nacho, right?
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. That's even the fact that you can't explain what you struggle with, you describe it as what you're doing is just it's interesting to me.
What do you struggle with?
Negative self-talk.
What does it sound like?
Negativity, anxiety.
About what?
Everything.
Does your anxiety stop things from happening?
Probably. Attention deficit disorder. Everything.
All right.
Muscles? No, that's not a problem.
See, scallops, you mean?
Sea scallops?
Muscles.
Oh. Ooh, zing.
But what are we talking about? Why are we
We
saying
just segued
this?
into kind of being vulnerable. Like, what do you
Is
honestly...
this interesting?
Yes. How about this? It's interesting to me.
I'm just joking.
I like it when the podcast turns into like, I try to be a therapist with you.
I'm not sure.
That always works good.
Yeah. Well, let's continue talking about that because I'm confused by that. So I've had anxiety 1,000 times. I go to bed any time we book a ticket to any place ever on a flight, I immediately, from the second you go, I bought this ticket, to the minute that we're taking off, I'm like, we're going to die in a crash. La, la, la. Like, I'm just like, every night I lay in bed and just think about a plane crashing and people dying and people blah. Like, I think I have anxiety,
Right.
but I also don't stay stuck there. I'm there in that space for about 8 minutes. And then I start meditating and thinking about like, things I've heard Wayne Dyer talk about and like, what is death? It's a part of life and blah, blah, blah. So like, I don't know. I don't stay stuck in that cycle very long because it doesn't change anything. And it only makes me feel worse because I look at that process of like living from fear or anxiety or whatever as it is a chemical process that I'm putting my body through. Right. So if I'm going to think about a plane crash, I can legitimately feel the like, I don't know, cortisol shoot through my body. I can feel it. I can feel it. And so that is really hard on your body. That's really hard on your system and your heart and everything to have to process a pretend like accident.
That's right.
A pretend crash. So I don't stay there long. So as you're saying, like, oh, I have anxiety or ADHD or I worry about things or I think about like, but you're not doing anything but harming yourself.
Right.
Right. That's the way that I look at it. Like I could be anxious about stepping up on a stage and singing, or I can just breathe and calm down.
What you're saying is it doesn't produce anything. It almost like...
Well, it does. It produces things you don't want.
Right.
It's nothing but bad for you. It serves a purpose if like a dog is chasing you to like have that right, but not if you're thinking about a dog chasing you. You are literally giving yourself the same internal chemical.
So then what do? You just say, nope, turning that off.
Yeah, sometimes that literally is all you have to do. And that's why like I used to take a big bouncy ball and write things on it for the kids because they would meditate. They would have anxiety at night. They would think about scary things or sad things. And I would write down on a ball. So you just kept spinning and spinning and you'd come back to the same ones over and over again. Because all it is training your mind not to stay on those things or to figure out why they're not important enough to keep around in the first place.
So you have trained your mind to just change the channel, basically.
Set your mind and keep it set.
Who says that?
Joyce Meyer.
Set your mind and keep it set. Wow.
Because we can set your mind to anything. I'm determined to whatever. Keep it set there like a channel on a TV.
Even if things don't go your way, even if what you thought
most certainly won't go your way. Why would you even think they would go your way?
Because I don't know.
It's like, no, just you get your mind set and keep it set. Want to hear something else really cool? I've already told you though, but
sure.
You can hear it. I had this recent idea that, everything is just a construct. Like beauty is a construct of culture, and anything like the importance of education. It's pretty much, we just invented it and made it up and put importance on it. Right. Anger is a construct. And I was washing the dishes and the kids were really irritating me and they were like fighting over something. I mean, who even knows? And I was like, I was getting so angry because I'm like, I just want them to get their shoes on and get in the car so we can go to the library before it closes and blah, blah, blah. And the literal like thing popped into my head of anger as a construct. Right. And, I can believe it or I don't need to believe it. It's like a choice. Like I can actually have the feeling, the initial like of anger and choose to ignore it or choose to be like, I saw that happened. No big deal.
It's kind of like being in a meditative state. Like in meditation, you have thoughts come in, you have thoughts come out, and I don't meditate. I have a couple times, and it's really interesting. But one of the ideas in meditation is you try to clear your mind, and anything that floats in your mind, you acknowledge it, and then let it float away. Yeah. Is that what you're saying? So like kind of living in, okay. I see anger coming. I use this example of a cloud in therapy. Like our emotions aren't always going to be on us forever. Anger, love, excitement, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes we can see this anger cloud coming. It's hovering over us. But guess what? We don't remain there. It's going to go away, right? So if we can look at thoughts that way of feeling overwhelmed, feeling anxious, feeling upset that our spouse didn't do whatever, here it comes. We know sometimes when that cloud comes around, certain times a day or whatever it comes, we acknowledge it and say, yeah, I am feeling, and here's where some positive self-talk can come in. I'm feeling upset, angry, whatever. I love my kids. I love my spouse, blah, blah, blah. And then you like shake some truth on it, get some real quotes around what is actually real in your life, and then we can see that anger, anxiety, or whatever floating away. Is that what you say you did?
Well, kind of. I mean, I would think of it like if you're using the cloud analogy, that the construct, the idea of anger being a construct is in effect an umbrella. It's still there. I'm still irritated. The kids are still not getting their shoes on and doing what I want. Pop that umbrella up, and I know, like, I have the option of being mad and yelling at them, or being like, like I'd learned this somewhere, that's what you do when your kids don't get ready on time.
You yell at them. Yeah.
I could also do something else. And that would apply to everything in relationships. Like, you leave the towels on the floor with Mariner after you do your wacky cold dip in the morning, and there's like been 8 towels on the floor for 4 days. And I could be like, what a dumb idiot. He's so stupid. He doesn't think about anything but himself, blah, blah, blah. Right?
I think that because this has happened over the last 2 weeks with you and I, you tend to say things that irritate you in the moment, right? You never kind of blow up and get mad. Yep. Right? Me,
there's research about that is better.
The 100% opposite of that, because I fear that if I say something, if I'm irritated or you didn't do something that I preferred or whatever, that just causes an argument and it hurts your feelings. And for me, it is 100% not worth it.
Causes an argument and hurts my feelings when you haven't told me that you don't like it for 6 months. Then the day 6 months and 1 day you tell me, hey, that thing you've been doing for 6 months is the worst thing and I hated it forever.
Right.
And so then I'm like, great, for 6 months I have backlog idiocy that you have not been talking about. That feels terrible.
Really?
Yeah, but if you're like, please don't set that piece of jewelry there, I'd be like, sure.
But then, so I like minimize my own feelings about that. I'm like, oh gosh, that really irritates me. This is what I'm thinking. That really irritates me, whatever that is right there. I'm being silly. That really doesn't matter. Let it go. Don't think about it.
This is when you need to know yourself. Know that when you minimize your feelings, they come back stronger later in 6 months.
Oh my goodness. I know that. It's practicing that. We can do a whole podcast on that if we're not already
doing it right now.
Right now, which I think is great. Hopefully you guys...
It's like 26 minutes we've been recording. No one's going to watch this.
It's a whole show. We'll release it in pieces. So what
Says
you are
the one
saying...
Who doesn't edit.
I have people do that for me.
No, but going back to vulnerability.
Right.
All of...
You know what? It is a practice in being vulnerable for me to tell you, hey, that I don't like it.
I know that it is. That's what makes me so mad. I'm so mad. But mad is a construct. I get my umbrella out. No, I know. Golly, what's this hair doing? I know that it is a practice in vulnerability for you because I know how you grew up. I see how your family functions, right? I've been in your house and whatever. And that's not to say anything negative about them, but I understand what you're like, how you're coming to the whole thing, like trying to keep the peace and make things whatever. But you don't know. You need to learn yourself better. Learn your patterns and be aware of them and be honest with yourself, like I was saying. So here's a good thing that, like, a good example. This is going to sound silly, but like, I know myself, so I don't buy things without asking you, asking mom, waiting, putting it back on the shelf, putting it in the cart, putting it back on the shelf. Because I know that if I buy it on impulse, I won't be happy about it later.
Really?
And you have always made fun of me for that. I do it on purpose. I put the, I don't know, the thermos in my cart and I look at the price tag. I think about, am I really going to, I put it and I shop around for a while and then I put it back. And then I look at it 2 weeks later and go,
oh my goodness.
I do it because I know myself. And if I just buy that thing, I won't be happy about it later. It's grown out of basically a sense of self-understanding. And that takes being vulnerable with myself and admitting when I look in the shed, we've got like boxes of stuff I don't use. Oh, I'm an idiot and bought all that crap and don't need it. That's hard to say to yourself. Takes vulnerability and all of those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
But like, I don't know.
It makes a lot of sense. And like, as you were talking, I am like the complete opposite of that.
I know.
Like, really, I get happy when I buy stuff.
I know.
Without asking, or it's not like I'm breaking a weird rule or whatever. Of course, I'm not going to spend a ton of money in usual cases. But yeah, that's so interesting. Oh my goodness. If you guys have questions, please write in, share what you and your spouse do. Like, she does this, he does that. It drives me insane, blah, blah, blah. Talk about it or write about it in a long blog post and we'll read it and possibly share it on anatomyofmarriage.com.
Yeah. Blog posts are really, really awesome.
Or even better, shoot videos of yourself talking like this. That's a really good idea. And we can put them on our Facebook page or wherever social stuff that we do. And that is it's our contribution in trying to be vulnerable and laying the groundwork for you being vulnerable too. So guess what? You with the shoulders, you have permission to be vulnerable. You do. Give yourself permission, agree with what we're saying or disagree, doesn't matter. However, we want to say that our quest is to normalize, again, create the material, create the content that we wish we had. And you know what? We would listen to our own podcast right now if we weren't even creating the podcast. I would share it with you, right?
Yeah.
And guess what? That's what we want to do, and it's fine, and it's helpful. This is helpful right now. What we're doing, recording a podcast, is helpful. It's going to give us insights, and then we're going to talk off camera, off mic, about different stuff, and be vulnerable, and we'll share it too. Maybe if it's helpful.
Yeah, let me say something too. So, I agree. I love that idea. Please send in any videos. Like, we will figure out a way. We'll edit them, get them into our community in a way and make them available for couples to watch or individuals to watch. Because there is something really weird that happens that we've learned accidentally from making the podcast. When you sit down and you have a headset on and a microphone and you have a camera pointing at you and all of these things, there's a clarifyingness to it because it's more permanent. You can watch it again.
Oh, right.
And it changes the way that you process and speak to one another. So that's one of the things that I immediately recognized when we started doing the podcast, just the audio form of it, that was like, I would listen back and be like, holy crap, I talk that way. I sound like that.
You're so rude.
Yeah, really. I was like, oh, I'm terrible. Right. But that was me trying to do my best. That was me trying to be like, oh, this is on recording.
Yeah.
I
So
shouldn't
actually,
be whatever.
So this is also an intervention that we've talked about. Record you and your spouse just on your iPhone, the little voice recorder. Record your arguments and then listen back to them. Only
agree that you will record them first.
Yeah,
Always
you're not
do
going to
that.
like sneaky record your spouse. That's
well,
not
if
cool.
you do that, you'll be in for it. Don't do that.
That's not right. And then you're going to use it as a critique. You're going to listen back and say, "Hey, how can I learn from this?" You're going to have a growth mindset when you press play, listening to the argument that you had. Where was I wrong? And it's not like, "See, I did say this," blah blah blah. It's not. You're not trying to like double jeopardy your spouse, because again, boo, that's not crappy. That's a terrible thing to do. But you're going to do it as an intervention, right? And you're going to grow and you're going to listen and be like, oh, okay, you know what? I do need to grow there. And here's another thing. Send in your videos of conversations like this. And then also, you guys may not know this, but we do have an Anatomy of Marriage YouTube channel.
We're working on it. You can see it. You can find it under videos on our website, anatomyofmarriage.com right now. We're working on building it. The other thing I was going to say too is straight up voice memos to your spouse or your partner or yourself is another huge way to do vulnerability and dip your toes in the water of vulnerability in a way that feels safe. Right? Record yourself. Don't sit down with your partner necessarily. This is not easy to do. It looks like it's easy to do, but it takes a lot of like, I trust you, we're in this together kind of thing. And if you're not there yet, but you want to move toward that, do the voice memos stuff that we talked about in like season 1, or I don't even remember when we talked about it, but it is a real awesome thing that happened. So when we were building this actual building that we're sitting in, Seth and I got in a really big fight one day, and I was having to like do the caulking on the trim work, and he was inside like renovating the kitchen, and we're like both just sweaty and dirty and working hard, and we're like mad as crap at each other. But it was like we needed to talk, but we could not talk. We didn't have time. We had to like watch the kids and do all this stuff. And so I pulled my phone out and just recorded a voice message, and I just was like, hey, I know that we just got in a big fight, but this isn't what I want. My intention was this, but it got off track here. Can you please meet me where we're like the deepest connected? Can you do that? Can we blah, blah, blah. He said, and then I texted it to him. It was about 3 minutes long. He sent me one back that was like, I think 8 minutes long.
Wow.
It was long, 8 or 5. But it was like, he sent one back and it said, I feel X, Y, and Z things. This is blah, 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 blah. And then I don't know if I sent another one back to you in reply or if it was just those two, but it was like unbelievably insightful. Like I learned more about Seth in the 5 or 8 minutes of audio that he texted me than if we argued for 4 days. And I'm not exaggerating. So I would say, vulnerability is super, super important, but we don't do it very well in our culture. We don't have a good, we just don't have a good model of vulnerability and healthy vulnerability, I guess. So if a great place to start is voice memos, just open your phone or whatever and start recording. And
try it out. Be brave and just try it out.
Yeah. And it might even be like literally just record. Like I would say even to you, record yourself telling yourself, hey, I deal with feeling insecure or whatever the thing is.
I think I've done that before. Yeah, it's basically, instead of journaling, you're just audio journaling.
But you're talking to yourself in there's sort of a different tone there.
And the thing about journaling or just audio recording yourself, it always brings up things that you weren't thinking about, but you're glad that you thought of them, which is so cool. I prescribe journaling all the time, or intentional journaling all the time as an intervention in counseling. So with that, the vulnerability episode comes to a conclusion.
Who's Jean?
I don't know. But thanks. We hope this has been helpful for you guys. We want to reiterate that we have Facebook pages. We have Facebook groups that you guys can go. There's some are private for the men and women, and there's a community around that. We have tons of free online resources at anatomyofmarriage.com. anatomy-of-marriage.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. What else? The podcast, obviously. And we also have a Anatomy of Marriage.
Patreon
I get
page?
all these socials totally mixed up. Yes, we also have a Patreon page, patreon.com/Anatomy of Marriage. If you like this video, if you like this format, and you find it helpful, please go shoot us some money. $1. I don't care.
$300. I don't care.
Well, actually, we do care. Thank you from $1 to $300 from anything.
Yeah, all support helps.
Yeah, all support helps. It absolutely helps make this possible and gives us real encouragement. So,
and if you can't support financially, please head to iTunes and rate the show, because the more ratings we get, I mean, it really helps people to find our podcast. So share it, rate it on iTunes.
And email us, anatomyofmarriage@gmail.com. We actually respond to every single email we get, and DM on Facebook or Insta or whatever. So with that, let's wrap up the show, and we want to thank you guys so much. Welcome to our new studio. We're going to be shooting our videos here. It's actually not a new studio, basically.
It's not.
We just kind of
It's a
set it
TV
up to
room.
look fancy. So
Craigslist.
it's what we got. All right, guys. Awesome. Anything else, Mel?
No.
All right. Love you guys.
See
Thank
you next week or later. Bye.